Hey, you don't belong here! This isn't a shelter, it's a five-star hotel. The sharp words cut through the air like knives, followed by laughter that echoed in the grand marble lobby. Heads turned, eyes narrowed, and every wealthy guest looked at him the same way, as if he were dirt on polished shoes. He stood there, hair unkempt, clothes worn and frayed, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. To them, he was a joke, an eyesore in a palace of luxury. But he didn't flinch. He didn't shrink away. His gaze was calm, steady, almost unsettling in its silence. The receptionist shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to call security or simply wait for him to leave. Whispers spread like wildfire across the gilded hall. Who let this man inside? Why isn't he being thrown out? To the rich and arrogant, his presence was an insult. But what they didn't know, what none of them could possibly imagine, it was that this homeless man carried something that would soon turn their laughter into stunned silence. The laughter grew louder as he walked further into the lobby, each step echoing against the marble floor like a challenge. A woman in diamonds leaned toward her husband, sneering, "Someone call security before this vagrant ruins the view." A young man in a tailored suit smirked, pulling out his phone to record, hoping to capture the humiliation for his followers. But the man did not stop. He carried himself with quiet dignity, every movement deliberate, unhurried. The receptionist cleared her throat nervously, trying to maintain professionalism. "Sir, I think you might be in the wrong place," she said carefully, as if speaking to a fragile child. But his eyes met hers, steady and sharp, and he placed his weathered hand on the counter. "I'm exactly where I need to be." The room erupted in scoffs and whispers, disbelief dripping from every corner. To the crowd, he was nothing but a homeless drifter stumbling where he didn't belong. Yet in his silence, in his calm defiance, there was something they couldn't explain, a presence that made the glittering lobby feel suddenly smaller. The jeers sharpened as he stood at the counter, his coat damp, shoes worn thin against polished marble. A man in an expensive blazer barked, "This isn't a shelter, old man. Leave before you embarrass yourself further." Laughter followed, harsh and merciless. Phones were raised higher now, recording every second of what they thought would be a spectacle of shame. But the man didn't flinch. He simply reached into his pocket, his movements slow, deliberate, as though the world had no power to rush him. The crowd leaned forward, expecting crumpled bills, maybe a plea for change. Even the receptionist braced herself, pity clouding her eyes. Yet the silence deepened, the tension thickened, and in that moment, with the weight of dozens of mocking eyes upon him, the man smiled faintly, as if he knew something they didn't, something that would turn this theater of ridicule into a lesson no one in that lobby would ever forget. The air grew thick with expectation, every polished shoe on the marble floor shifting nervously. The homeless man's hands moved slowly, deliberately, as though he were savoring the moment. A group of wealthy men leaned against the counters, whispering, "He's going to beg. Just watch." Laughter erupted, sharp and condescending, echoing off the grand chandeliers. Phones lifted higher, eager to capture his humiliation. He didn't flinch, didn't stammer. Every mocking glance, every pointed finger rolled off him like water on stone. His eyes locked with the receptionist's, calm, unshakable, almost daring him to judge. And then, as the laughter reached a peak, his hand paused inside his coat pocket. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips, subtle but unmistakable. Something was coming, something no one in that lobby could have imagined. In that frozen heartbeat, the room held its breath, waiting for what would change everything. The air grew thick with expectation, every polished shoe on the marble floor shifting nervously. The homeless man's hands moved slowly, deliberately, as though he were savoring the moment. A group of wealthy men leaned against the counters, whispering, "He's going to beg. Just watch." Laughter erupted, sharp and condescending, echoing off the grand chandeliers. Phones lifted higher, eager to capture his humiliation. He didn't flinch, didn't stammer. Every mocking glance, every pointed finger rolled off him like water on stone. His eyes locked with the receptionist's, calm, unshakable, almost daring him to judge. And then, as the laughter reached a peak, his hand paused inside his coat pocket. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips, subtle but unmistakable. Something was coming, something no one in that lobby could have imagined. In that frozen heartbeat, the room held its breath, waiting for what would change everything. The wealthy men stood frozen, their arrogance evaporating in an instant. Some opened their mouths, words trapped by disbelief. Others stared at the card as if it were a foreign artifact. The homeless man's calm demeanor only amplified their shock. his eyes scanning the room with quiet authority. Phones dropped, whispers stilled, and even the tallest, most confident men couldn't meet his gaze. Every mocking gesture from before now felt like a distant memory, replaced by sudden respect and a hint of fear. He slid the card back into his coat, each movement precise, unhurried, and utterly controlled. Without a word, he turned toward the exit, the echo of his steps filling the grand lobby. The men who had laughed now watched him go, powerless, humbled, and forever reminded that appearances can deceive, and status isn't always visible. Sometimes, it arrives silently with unstoppable force. As he reached the grand doors, the murmurs of the wealthy men followed him, a mixture of awe and lingering disbelief. The lobby that had once echoed with laughter now felt heavy with regret. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to the quiet revolution that had just unfolded inside the marble halls. Men who had flaunted their status moments ago now stared at the entrance, replaying every gesture, every smirk, every assumption they had made. The homeless man's stride remained steady, unhurried, each step carrying the invisible weight of power that no suit, no gold cufflink could match. He vanished into the sunlight, leaving a room full of humbled men to question what they thought they knew about wealth, judgment, and true authority. For once, they had been outmatched, not by force, but by the quiet mastery of presence, confidence, and the kind of power money alone could never buy. Inside the lobby, the wealthy men exchanged glances, their confidence shattered. Some fidgeted with ties, others adjusted watches, as if armor could protect them from the sting of embarrassment. "Did he just—" one whispered, voice trailing off in disbelief. Every mocking laugh from earlier now felt foolish, empty, a memory of arrogance that had met an immovable force. The homeless man had not only revealed his power, he had rewritten the rules of the room, silently, without a single word of explanation. The men's eyes followed the exit, hearts sinking, pride bruised. They had assumed control, assumed superiority, and now they were forced to confront the uncomfortable. Truth. Appearances are deceiving. Assumptions are dangerous, and real influence often arrives unannounced, leaving only respect or regret in its wake. The street outside the hotel was bustling, but inside, the impact of his presence lingered like a storm cloud. The men who had laughed moments ago now whispered among themselves, replaying the scene again and again. Each subtle gesture, each calm glance of the homeless man now held monumental weight in their minds. Their assumptions, their arrogance, their laughter, all shattered in seconds by someone they had underestimated. Some tried to convince themselves it was luck, coincidence, or some trick. But deep down, they knew the truth. Authority doesn't always wear a suit, and wealth doesn't always come in gold. It can come in confidence, poise, and quiet mastery that silences even the loudest skeptics. The homeless man, calm and composed, disappeared down the sidewalk, leaving behind a wake of humbled men, shaken egos, and the profound understanding that real power can never be faked or mocked. By the time the last echoes of the lobby faded, the wealthy men were left to reflect on their own behavior. The laughter, the sneers, the assumptions, they all felt meaningless now. The homeless man had walked in unnoticed, mocked without mercy, and left a lesson far greater than anyone could have anticipated. Outside, the city continued its rhythm, oblivious to the quiet revolution inside the five-star walls. The men remained inside, staring at the entrance, wondering how they had misjudged a single person so completely. It wasn't wealth, attire, or status that had defined him. It was presence, control, and an unshakable confidence. And while they had counted him out, he had silently reminded them that power often arrives unannounced, invisible to those blinded by arrogance. Sometimes the richest lessons come not from gold or titles, but from those we least expect.